I'm Brianna Keeler, live from CNN's Washington headquarters. Underway right now. The goalposts seem to now be in the parking lot, as the man defending the president says he can no longer rule out that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. Plus, the man who used to defend the president now admits paying to rig online polls during the campaign. And as the shutdown escalates, the president reportedly fumes to his staff that he's getting crushed. And the suspicious timing of the president's Trump Tower meeting response and a secret chat with Vladimir Putin. But we start with the White House getting ready for a fight over the results of the Mueller report and for fights with Democrats in the House of Representatives. CNN political correspondent Sarah Murray is here with us, as well as CNN senior White House correspondent Pamela Brown. How exactly are they preparing now, Pamela, for this report?
Well, the White House has been quietly readying a strategy, laying the groundwork to prevent, mitigate any political fallout from both the Mueller report and House oversight investigations. And so what we are told, sources telling both of us, is that the White House counsel's office and allied groups outside of the White House have been preparing for a political and public relations strategy. And so that is really what the focus has been. There is no war room set up yet. That is likely going to happen. But we're told that the press team in the White House is expected to beef up with people with legal expertise who can field these inquiries related to Russia, related to House oversight. As you know, up until this point, the White House has told reporters to go to outside counsel, Rudy Giuliani, who has been the main spokesperson on all Russia-related matters. Now, Rudy Giuliani and the legal team says that they're going to have a counter report to Mueller's report. But the White House is preparing for something much broader, and they're also going to try to do whatever they can to keep the Mueller report under wraps. As you know, Bill Barr, the nominee for AG, indicated he wants at least some of the report to be made public. But the White House is going to do what it can to keep that under wraps, and they're prepared for a potential subpoena fight over the matter.
And when, obviously, you don't want to totally reinvent the wheel when you're doing something like this. So they must be studying what happened in the past when the Starr report came out.
They absolutely are looking at sort of what worked and didn't work in the past. You know, obviously, when the Starr report came out, the Clinton team attacked Ken Starr kind of mercilessly. We're obviously seeing that happen already with Trump and his allies when it came to Mueller. But the other thing about the Clinton team is they were extremely aggressive in pushing back in what they thought was going to be coming from Ken Starr, and then when the results were made public. And I think that the Trump team wants to do that. One of the interesting things, though, is they're trying to sort of tailor their response. Sources tell me they really want to focus on any allegations that might have anything to do with President Trump and hammer home the idea that the president did nothing wrong. He wasn't engaged in obstruction. He wasn't engaged in collusion, and just let the rest of it fall by the wayside. So, you know, Russian troll farms, Paul Manafort, none of that has anything to do with me. And the folks from the Clinton era were a little bit skeptical that something like this could work. You know, the buck kind of stops with the president when you're in the White House. So, you know, we'll see how that goes for them.
Great reporting, you guys. Pamela, Sarah, thank you. Now to those ever-moving goalposts. My, how far we have come from Hope Hicks claiming back in 2016 that there was no communication whatsoever between Trump campaign officials and any foreign entities to where we are now, that maybe, just maybe, someone on the campaign colluded with Russia. That is a stunning admission. It was made right here on CNN last night by the president's own attorney, Rudy Giuliani, to our Chris Cuomo.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes,
I have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. There is not a single bit of evidence the President of the United States committed the only crime you could commit here, conspired with the Russians to hack the DNC.
Let's play that first part one more time for the people in the back.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign.
There you are. And I don't think I have to tell you why Chris Cuomo looks so incredulous right there. The president has repeatedly, if not incessantly at times, claimed that there was no collusion, not just by him, but by anyone on his campaign.
There is no collusion between me and my campaign and the Russians.
No collusion whatsoever?
There has been no collusion, no collusion. They all say there's no collusion, and there is no collusion. I can only say this, there was absolutely no collusion. It has been determined that there is no collusion. When they have no collusion, and nobody's found any collusion, there was no collusion with Russia, if you can believe this one.
With me, nothing. No collusion, no nothing.
To say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion.
Everybody knows there was no collusion whatsoever. They have found no collusion, and they won't find collusion.
And those are just the sound bites. Of course, there are print interviews and there are a lot of tweets, many, many tweets, where the president explicitly says that his campaign did not collude. We have Joseph Marino. He is a former DOJ prosecutor, and Gloria Borger, our chief political analyst, with us. First off, the thing that struck me when I'm watching that interview, and that I actually thought, I mean, you can kind of chuckle at Chris Cuomo's face, but it was also very important because it communicated just how false what Rudy Giuliani was saying was.
Yeah, I think it was incredulous. Chris was sort of looking at him saying, with his face, with his eyes, "Are you kidding me?" and as you know, Rudy's tried to walk it back today, saying he's only the president's lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. But just hearing him say that means that he is actually listening or watching, which of course I assume he is, what's going on with the special counsel. Manafort, Gates cooperating. I mean, you can't miss those things. And that spells collusion.
And Joe, Giuliani serves this interesting role. He frequently says things. Now, the first time he did it, we thought, oh my goodness, is he not on the same page with the president? But then over time, we've realized he will come out and say something. And he is sometimes getting ahead of a revelation or saying something different than what the president has said. And there's a reason for why he is saying it. With that in mind, what do you read into this?
Well, I have to say, I have a begrudging admiration for Mayor Giuliani because he's willing to go and answer tough questions, respectful questions, and I do think he's trying to be honest, and he's trying to talk straight. But to have to say these things and then walk them back, I mean, their strategy is all over the place. And, obviously he's trying to say two things I saw out of the soundbite that's most frequently played. One, he's trying to say, look, maybe there was collusion, but my client, the president, wasn't involved. And then, by the way, there's only this narrow crime of conspiracy you can charge him with, and that didn't happen, so therefore there's nothing else to see here. It's a poorly executed strategy, but you can see the strategy behind it.
All right, you guys stay with me. We have much more to talk about, from collusion, confusion, to secret payments and attempted poll rigging. President Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, confirms he paid a firm to try to rig online polls in Trump's favor ahead of the 2016 presidential campaign. The Wall Street Journal first reported details of these payments, and the paper says the head of the technology firm showed up at Trump Tower in early 2015 to collect $50,000. According to the report, quote, Cohen surprised the man, John Gauger, by giving him a blue Walmart bag containing between $12,000 and $13,000 in cash. Cohen actually disputes that. He says the payments were made by check. He doesn't say it didn't happen. He said they were made by check. So in a statement to CNN, he says, as for the Wall Street Journal article on poll rigging, what I did was at the direction and for the sole benefit of Donald J. Trump. I truly regret my blind loyalty to a man who doesn't deserve it. All right, Gloria Borger, Joe Marino back with us on this. What do you make of this, Gloria?
Well, it's kind of an audacious story, first of all. Secondly, what sticks in my mind is that this is a president who complains about fake news, right? All the time, fake news. And what he was trying to do, and Michael Cohen says it was at the president's direction, what he was trying to do was supply fake news, and in the form of polling, and supply fake polls to make him look better. So I don't think the president has a lot of credibility when he talks about anything that's fake, because that's what he was trying to do.
When we at CNN, Joseph, look at polls, we don't use online polls. Just to be clear, when we are doing polls of polls and citing different polls, we're very judicious in what we consider to meet a certain standard. Online polls don't, because there is some openness to manipulation, right? You don't always know who is on the other end answering the question. But is there anything legally wrong with this?
Well, every time we see one of these revelations, whether it comes from Michael Cohen or Paul Manafort or wherever else, it's the first thing I think of, right? Is could this be part of an indictment, part of an impeachment case? What strikes me from this story is not so much the legal aspect. I don't know if this is going to be part of a larger case or just one of the tawdry details we've learned about this whole situation. It goes to me, though, the importance of choosing those around you carefully, especially your lawyers. I mean, a good lawyer advises his or her client, and if they're told to do something wrong, they say no, and ultimately you resign rather than do it. The fact that Michael Cohen was willing to do these things, and the fact that President Trump kept him around as long as he did, and had him so involved in his affairs, that's what scares me. It's the judgment.
And that's what Michael Cohen talks about all the time now, which is, and he did it in his interview with George Stephanopoulos, which is the blind loyalty that drove him to do this. And if he ends up testifying before Congress, which we think he intends to do today, and he's supposed to testify February 7th, I think you'll hear a lot about that he's not the villain of the story. It was the president was, and that it was his blind loyalty, which he now regrets, both personally and I presume legally.
Fine to regret it now, but he shouldn't have done it in the first place. So I think there's two villains here.
Absolutely, you know, absolutely. But that's his story.
Michael Cohen was actually on Wolf Blitzer's show, The Situation Room, when I was filling in a few months before the election, and there was a moment that we had in an interview, and there are certain days where people get back in touch with me, or I see traffic on Twitter where people sort of revisit that interview. Let's take a look. You guys are down, and it makes sense that there would...
Says
polls,
who?
most of them. All of them?
Says who?
Polls. I just told you, I answered your question.
Okay. Which polls?
All of them.
Okay.
And today was one of those days. So this happens every so often, every few months, or something that kind of brings it back up. In seriousness, though, when it comes to looking at Michael Cohen there as a defender of Trump, and holy cow, that I look at that and I say, a year before that, he was online poll tampering? It's wild, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lawyer shouldn't be an all-purpose fixer. He shouldn't be paying people, whether it's bags of cash or a check, fixing polls. I mean, it's so inappropriate. And again, it just goes to me as like the importance of choosing people around you that are quality individuals. I mean, look at the nominee Bill Barr earlier this week.
But is that what Trump wanted?
Well, I mean, look, it goes to judgment as far as I'm concerned. He's made some fantastic appointments and nominations as president, but he's shown some horrendous judgment in his personal life and his pre-presidential life in terms of those he surrounded himself with. And Michael Cohen's a perfect example of that.
Don't confuse your Michaels, Joe. Joe Marino, thank you so much. You corrected yourself. Thank you. Gloria Borger, really appreciate it. President Trump is standing firm on his position on border security, but there are cracks in his wall of support. Each day of the shutdown is bringing more negative news coverage, slipping poll numbers, Democratic attacks, all of the things that infuriate the president. CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza is here with that. He is under pressure, Chris. Walk us through all of these things he's facing right now.
Okay, I'm going to do it, but man, that polls all of them clip brings back the memories. Okay, let's go to the big board, and it is a big board, as you point out, Brianna, a lot of things going on. What a tangled web we weave. You can start anywhere, you can jump in, but let's jump in here. There's a House Democratic majority now, divided government. Donald Trump's learning that lesson, most importantly because Nancy Pelosi says, you know that January 29th invitation to give the State of the Union? Yeah, not so much anymore. Okay, staff vacancies. Now, Trump always says, so many people want to work for me, everyone's begging, but we've seen time and time again, whether it's communications director, some of his cabinet positions, people really not wanting to serve. So that's another one. The Syria withdrawal announced on Twitter. Lindsey Graham has said, well, maybe it's not exactly what it was. You saw Jim Mattis resign in protest as a result as Secretary of Defense. That's another one. The economy. I want to tie these two together. Economy and the shutdown. The economy broadly has been humming along for Donald Trump, but the shutdown, now in its 27th day, longest in history, is threatening to hurt the economic growth. And we know that the government underestimated the amount, by a significant amount, underestimated the amount of damage the shutdown could do to the broader economy. I mean, you guys have been talking about this, the Mueller probe. I mean, we could do just this connection as a pressure point for Donald Trump. Bob Mueller has found so much already. We're talking about 192 criminal convictions, 36 people and entities charged, 7 people have pled guilty, 4 who have been sentenced to prison, 1, Paul Manafort, who has been convicted by a jury of his peers. Cabinet nominees. So we saw this on the Hill this week. We saw the acting EPA administrator, his hearing, confirmation hearing, as well as the Attorney General nominee. What's interesting about that is maybe they both get through, Brad. I'm not sure about the Senate votes, but both of them took a series of positions, whether it was on climate change or the Mueller probe, that were directly in opposition or close to directly in opposition to Donald Trump's established position. Okay, 2 more Senate Republicans. Look, no matter what Donald Trump says about how united they all are, there are cracks. Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, people getting more and more and more nervous that just saying, I want $5 billion for the wall isn't enough. I did shut down, a huge problem politically, huge problem just from the fact that you have 800,000 people, federal workers reporting to work, either not getting paid or furloughed. And the Watchdog report, this is about the emoluments clause. This is about should Trump Tower have, should the Trump Hotel been used as the emoluments clause? Should it have been closed? The GSA, General Services Administration, was knocked by the Inspector General, said the way that they interpreted this when Donald Trump was elected president was incorrect. I mean, this is a big deal in any other administration. In the sweep of this, it's just one bubble. But it speaks to Donald Trump just getting squeezed from so many different angles. And I think he feels it. I think it's why you see some of his lashing out more and more. Brianna, back to you.
Certainly. Chris, thank you. As Nancy Pelosi pushes the president to move his State of the Union speech, the president reportedly tells his staff that they're getting crushed, something Chris Cillizza just talked about, in this shutdown fight. Plus, the Trump administration now admitting more children were separated from their parents at the border than previously reported. In fact, they don't even know the exact number. And new reporting from CNN that President Trump is fraying nerves inside of the Pentagon, in part because of his unpredictable decision-making.